with what is ONDC. We are going to cover some basics of ONDC. I'm assuming people who are attending this webinar have some background of ONDC, but for the benefit of everyone, I'll take only 5 minutes just covering what ONDC is, how it can be useful, that kind of stuff. And then basically we will look at ONDC architecture. This is a technical webinar, which means that we are going to go into a lot of details with respect to APIs, how the API structure is. So a lot of gory details. I mean, a lot of deep details that we'll go into. And so I just want to I want to put that out in front that there's going to be a technical webinar. But if you have any questions with respect to ONDC, you can ask me during the presentation. I'll try to answer as quickly as possible. And if you have any comments, please leave your comments in the chat. I'm happy to respond to that whenever possible. So I'll start the webinar now. So ONDC, one of the things that I get asked a lot of times is what is ONDC? And ONDC, the full form of ONDC is Open Network for Digital Commerce, which means that it's open, it's a network, and it's for digital commerce. It's open in the sense that anyone can participate. It's a network, which means that it is not a platform. It is not an application. It's not a website where you can go and log in. So don't look for ONDC, website and those kind of stuff. It doesn't exist. You cannot log into ONDC website. The only way you can participate in ONDC is become a participant as a network participant. And for that, basically, this technology webinar, this tech webinar that we are doing right now will be useful for you. It's an initiative by Indian government to increase e-commerce penetration in India. The government is very excited about e-commerce and want to make sure that e-commerce is, reaches to the last person in the country, and no one is left. So basically, everyone can participate. That's basically is the reason why ONDC exists. It's an exciting network. It's an upcoming network which is going to have a lot of impact on e-commerce in India. There are a lot of buzz in media right now on ONDC, and rightly so, because a lot of big names are participating. Although big names are participating, it doesn't mean that this platform is for them. This platform is for everyone, this network, right? What is the impact that ONDC is expected to make? That is also another question that I get asked a lot. So what are expected? Now these are expectations, but I'm very hopeful that this will happen. Is that more than 30 crore customers expected to use ONDC, more than any Flipkarts and Amazons in the world. So much more than them. More than 100 crore orders per month expected on ONDC channel, and more than 1.5 crore sellers are expected to participate in ONDC. So basically, this is a population scale network. This is a network where everyone is participating, expected to participate, and that's why it is fun. It is exciting. It's very productive. It's remunerative. It's hopefully everyone is business is going to get impacted positively because of ONDC. So ONDC transforms e-commerce. I mean, that's pretty much the bottom line here. Just a very high level on ONDC as a technology. So when we go on a website, you see this. Pretty much is a combination of a storefront for buyers, a platform, and suppliers. And value lies in all these three places: storefront, where the customer is coming; platform, which basically has logic, business logic; and suppliers, where who supply, dispatch, do quality check, so supply have a lot of value. So these are the three value pillars in e-commerce. And what ONDC is trying, is have done is is broken these three into three separate, entities, and created like a seller app ecosystem, a buyer app ecosystem, and ONDC, which is a specification which tells how a seller app and a buyer app can participate. Yeah, so basically it's a specification. It basically tells you, like in any English language, I can communicate to you in an English language. Same way, it tells how a buyer app and a seller app can talk to each other. That's the only thing the ONDC is doing. And buyer apps and seller apps are participants who basically come from basically we are the participant. So it can be any seller, any buyer, kind of stuff. So basically architecture is simple. There is a gateway in between. Now the only reason why gateway exists is to broadcast a search. And that's what we'll see when we go into more detail into APIs and those kind of stuff, the role of gateway. But primarily you have you have seller apps and buyer apps, and there is a gateway. Again, gateway is not a control entity by ONDC. As per them, it's something that a third party can also participate as a gateway. Registry is where basically all the participants like buyer apps, seller apps, they register on a registry. Now, of course, the registry is something which is controlled by ONDC. And then there's a reputation ledger, which basically sort of tells what's the reputation of each of these apps, to ensure that bad parties, bad apples are known and they can be thrown out if needed. It's basically category agnostic. So one of the interesting things about ONDC is category agnostic. So across all categories, whether it's insurance, whether it's travel, whether it's a kirana store, agriculture, services, your fashion, food, beverages, whatever category you can think of, that category is supported by ONDC. So it's category agnostic. It is location agnostic, which means anyone can participate from anywhere. Even it is country agnostic, although it's focused on India right now. But there's nothing in the protocol which says it has to be, it is India specific. There's nothing in the protocol. So it's country, city, pin code agnostic. And it is business model agnostic, which means B2C, B2B, whatever, B2G, B2B2C, whatever model you have, basically you can participate, right? And mostly what is expected is on the buyer app side will be these big giants, banks, your payment companies, Paytm kind of stuff, Phone Pay, Google Pay, telcos potentially. These are the people who participate in the buyer app because they have the customers, they have consumers who come on the platform every day. While seller ecosystem will be primarily your kirana stores and seller aggregators and those kind of stuff which are going to participate from the seller side. Now, basically, if you're a seller app, you have to manage your catalog. What is your role there? Right? You manage your catalog, you onboard suppliers, do the QC, you dispatch, you manage the courier, you manage home deliveries. Right? If you are on the buyer app side, your role becomes you have to market, you have to acquire customers, you have to collect payments, you have to make sure your website where people can come and buy. You do customer service, you manage customer refunds. So that basically is your buyer app responsibility and the seller app responsibility. That's why if you have a lot of customers, if you believe that you can acquire customers, you play the role on the buyer app side. But if you have a lot of supply, if you have a lot of products, if you're manufacturing something, if you are in a locality where you can aggregate sellers, you play the role on the seller app side. And what are we looking at, when we look at ONDC, one of the things people are starting to talk, I mean, it's not something it's there in a full-fledged is subnets. And what will happen, what's going to happen or may happen is that these smaller subnets will start to come and get connected to the ONDC mainnet, because it's easier to manage smaller subnets. And then basically in these smaller subnets, deep hyperlogistics network would start to come, where people who are on cycles, or people who can deliver in 1 kilometer and 500 meters. Basically, some logistics partners who we don't even know, like not the Dunzos or the Swiggies of the world, but people who are managing a mohalla level network might start to emerge. So those are the interesting possibilities. Insurance sector, for example, if we take it's also possible that insurance, these HDFC Life or Kodak Life, these insurance companies actually become seller apps, and they manage the agent network behind. And if there's any life insurance query in, let's say, HSR layout in Bangalore, or Borivali in Mumbai, or South Delhi, then that can be routed to a particular agent, if customer selects that HDFC Life or Kotak Life Insurance as insurance. So interesting possibilities that are starting to emerge. You may see smaller subnets, like in city subnets, Mumbai, Chennai, and they're basically connecting to the ONDC mainnet. Those possibilities may emerge in future. Just now, so basically that was like a big overview on ONDC. What is ONDC, how it will impact, what are the possibilities, how different people can participate. Now coming to the technology part of it, what is ONDC from a tech perspective. So ONDC, is something which is based on a particular protocol called Backend Protocol. Now, Backend Protocol is something you may or may not have heard, but it's the protocol which basically, I think started sometime. The genesis is 2018 year, and it's run by a backend group of backend foundation, something like that. And so that protocol actually is the basis for ONDC specification. And so you might hear about backend when we talk about ONDC, and so you should not think that, oh, what is backend, but it's just that the specification which ONDC adopted it actually came from backend. So what are we are talking about now? This is where the fun part of technology starts. Till now, basically, we are looking at like top level, what is ONDC and those kind of stuff. There are basically 10 transaction APIs, and they are 10 related callbacks in the ONDC architecture. And then there are 3 network infra APIs, which basically is something that is basically are not where everyone needs to implement. It's basically subscribe and search and look up as something that it will be called to some infrastructure in the ONDC architecture. For example, lookup of a particular provider public key from on the registry, right, is a lookup call which has to be done. Or if you want to subscribe as a seller app on the registry, then it's a subscribe basically. So there are 10 transaction APIs, there are 10 related callbacks, and then there are 3 infrastructure APIs. So there are 23 that you need to worry about when you're looking at the whole technology stack. And basically, if you look at the order lifecycle, it starts with discovery. So one API, which is search, is your discovery related API, which basically helps you discover products in the ONDC network. And then there are 3 order related APIs, which is select, init, and confirm. This is where these 3 order APIs basically are making sure that you can select a product, basically add to cart, You can initiate a payment, which is init, and then you confirm an order, which is confirm, right? And then there are fulfillment related, APIs, which are status, track, and update, which means that if you have to know the status of any order after it has been created, then you can look at the status of the order through status API. Track, which means if you want to track a particular order, where it is and what it is, then it's track API. And then update is if you want to update the order in by the billing address or those kind of stuff, and it's update API. And then cancel API. You can cancel an order, so cancel API. And then there's support and rating, two support and rating API, which is rating, because you can rate each other. The seller app can rate a buyer app, and buyer app can rate a seller app. So there's a rating API. And then there's support API, which basically can be called for support, customer support related, details and those kind of stuff. So that's basically the 10 APIs. And I will also talk about the callback APIs, which is on search. And the reason why they're callbacks is basically because APIs are async. In ONDC world, basically APIs are async, which means that if you call a select, don't expect an immediate response. It's basically, you'll call a select API from, let's say, buyer app to a seller app. And seller app will say, okay, I've received your request, which is an ACK. And I will let you know the response, which is the on select API, whenever, in like few seconds. And that few seconds are defined by TTL, which is time to live, right? Where, buyer app will say, oh, I will only, something that I will, entertain only requests up to 3 seconds or 5 seconds or 10 seconds. After that, I'll just, assume that you have not responded, right? So because you can't be forever waiting, right? That also is something there. Now, so select is something that is done by buyer app, seller app. There's an act, immediate act by the seller app. So there is no response other than saying that I have received it. Then after a while, when seller, sometimes in offline world, seller app may have to call, whether, oh, I have inventory or not, whether I have received a cart request, making sure that I have inventory, and then you can basically do on select. Of course, when you're checking inventory, real time, your TTLs might be long, so you have to be careful about making sure that you can respond very quickly. But if buyer app is flexible, for example, sometimes restaurant world, if someone has said, "Okay, I want this product, this roti or something, or this curry," the restaurant might have to take some time to say, "Okay, I have it, I can make it or not," right? So that's something that on select might have a delay with this book select. So basic thing I want to tell you here is that APIs are async, and that's why there's a callback. So whenever I said there's a search, there's on search, because search, when I fire a search request, I don't get a response immediately. The response comes later as a callback from the seller app to buyer app, that, okay, here are the search results, which is on search. So select has on select, init has on init, confirm is on confirm, status has on status, track has on track, update has on update. So similarly, so that's how this this structure is there, because these are async. Now you might see that there's the network infrastructure API also has search and on search, and transaction API also has a search and on search. And this is the reason why, because gateway, the reason why gateway exists only for search and on search. For all other 9 API calls, you basically are doing peer-to-peer, which means that buyer app will directly call the seller app, and seller app will directly call the buyer app. You don't call the gateway for these APIs. Only for search and on search is where the gateway has a role, and you cannot directly call the seller app for search, and you cannot directly call on search. from seller app to buyer app, you have to go through gateway, right? So the three things which are important here is that APIs are async. So if you have to architect your API request and response, architect in a way that you make sure that you may have a queuing system in between, so that you take the request, process it, and then give it back, rather than immediate response kind of stuff. So you have to architect it that way. Second thing, you have to ensure that you make sure that search and answer, because a lot of people don't know that it's not intuitive, or it's not visible enough for you to see, okay, I only for these two APIs I need gateway, and for other APIs I actually directly connect to the seller app and buyer app. So those are two things I thought I'll point out. I'll just take a few I'll take one transaction as an example to show you how the whole flow works, because before I get into the API architecture and how API is structured and those kind of stuff, it's good to know how the flow is happening. Let me just see if I have. Okay, I need to ask about piracy control and data privacy. See, data privacy. So one thing which I'll just take quickly these two questions. So one thing in ONDC is that ONDC doesn't store any transactional data anywhere. So only places where data is stored is either on the seller app or the buyer app side, right? And that is basically is control, and so your privacy or your data controls are as per the policies of these buyer apps or seller apps. So you should not worry about, oh, somewhere someone is storing all my data, because I also get a lot of questions around, oh, but all my data will be visible to everyone, including government. So that is a problem for me. So one of the things which at least I'm aware as of today is that your data is not stored by ONDC anywhere. The only thing they're seeing is search and on search through gateways, and gateway again is not a ONDC control entity, at least in their specification. So yeah, so that's something I would say that that's where the stand is right now. Second question is it blockchain based DApp? No, it is not. The architecture is I would say, because decentralized and democratized network, sometimes, you get a feeling that, this is a blockchain, but actually blockchain can play a very pivotal role here, although there is no blockchain as of today. There are central ledgers like reputation ledger, but those are not based on blockchain technology right now. So yeah, there's a huge potential of where blockchain can play a role in ONDC. But as per spec or as per from an ONDC perspective, blockchain is not there right now in any of these. So okay, so I'll take one more question. How do I register seller app? Can I register for both buyer app, seller app? Yeah, you can register as both as a buyer and app and seller app. There's no restriction on you being that only seller app, or you can only be a buyer app. Your endpoints will differ. Your that is there, because where you're taking your callbacks and those kind of stuff will differ, but there's no restriction that you cannot be a buyer app if you're a seller app, or if you cannot be a seller app if you're a buyer app. So it can be both. How do I register as seller app? So basically right now, if you ask me right now, this is a manual process, but very soon, I'm hoping very soon, the subscribe API, which is the API used to subscribe to registry on the main net, on the production net, will be open, which but as of today, it's a manual process. you have to basically write to team@ondc.org and request for you to be added to a particular cohort. They have a cohort 1, cohort 2, and cohort 3, and subsequent cohorts which are coming, and they basically bucket you in each cohort, and then they basically guide you, how that happens. So it is a bit manual process to register. It's a bit controlled in a way, but they're working very, very quickly on resolving that. So hopefully that will be resolved soon. Who handles payments? How does commission amount gets distributed between different parties? So this webinar, I have not, specifically, I want to avoid payments and those kind of stuff. But if I have time at the end, I'll definitely cover payment. Yeah, these are other question is these are RESTful webs. Yeah, these are REST APIs basically. It's basically yeah, so you basically call as you call other APIs, REST APIs. So there's nothing different here. Simple to use. You can use any Postman or any other tools to basically fire the APIs. Yeah, so I think those are the questions I had. I'll continue my webinar again. Yeah, so basically subscribe. So as I said, subscribe is an API which is yet not open to everyone. So you can't really do that. But the architecture is the way that if you want to participate in ONDC, you have to subscribe your app to a registry, which is a central registry, and basically your request basically is in this format, where you're saying that country, for example. I am in country. As I said, it's country, it's a location agnostic. So there is a provision for country in the registry, which means that it could be Singapore or those kind of stuff also as ONDC if it goes global. So that provision is already there. Country. So country is IND, which is India. City star means that you can deliver everywhere. If you are only delivering to particular pin code, particular city, then you put the city here as a comma separated, STD codes. So it's basically the city code is your STD code. For Bangalore, for example, is 080. For Mumbai, it's 022. So you have to put that in the city. If you deliver everywhere in India, well and good, you put star. Right? When is this created? It's when is this valid till? What is the type? So type is a buyer app, as I said, it's a buyer app, or you could be seller app, right? So when you're registering, this is what you send to the registry. So that's what I'm telling you here. What do you send, right? And then you have to send a public key. And this public key is something that is stored in the registry. Now, how do you generate it? Public key is something I'll briefly touch in the next few slides. But there's a public key which you have to give to registry so that people can take that public key, and when the payload comes from you, they can verify actually is coming from you, right? So it's making sure that no one can fudge you or fake you somehow, right? So this public key protects you from that way, so there's a public key that you have to submit, and there's a way you have to generate this public key. It's not like you can give any random thing and those kind of stuff. It is of course random enough, it's random in nature, but there's a way to generate it. And then there's subscriber ID, which is usually your domain name, right? And when is it valid till, valid from, and valid till, right? Subscriber URL is where is a public URL where everyone can do the callback to you, right? If they have to ping you directly, this is the URL they will use to ping, right? So if they ping you through search, So it becomes https api.plos.ai/v1/136.833/search, right? So that's how they will ping you through search, or if it's on search, if it's /on search. Right? So this subscriber URL tells them how they will ping you. Domain is basically it's a defined category or domain. In basically ONDC world, they call it's domain. It's a retail domain, or it's a logistics domain. These are two domains which are open right now. So, but there may be other domains. They may come up and move on. So this is the code for. I believe this is the code for a retail domain, right? Which means that you're a retail partner. In ONDC, you can also participate as a logistics provider, not just as a retail provider, not just for buying and selling. You can also participate as Dunzo or delivery or DTDC. If you have your own courier company, you can participate as that, right? And then basically there's an encryption key also. Encryption is basically how you encrypt your data. That public key is also you have to give. So this is how you have to submit your subscribe request. And once they on once they approve it, you get a UKID, unique key ID, which they assign as whatever number it may be. Right now is 215, 280 or something like that kind of number is there right now. So that ID, that approved, that you are approved and this is your ID in the registry, that is given to you. So your UKID is given to you. Yeah. So that's basically how you subscribe. That's something. I'm just looking at if there's any questions I should answer. So this is basically the flow. Your buyer apps usually call search, select, init, and confirm. Search is when you're searching for a product. Select is when someone has basically added to cart that product on your website, on your buyer app. Init is when you have initiated a payment. So init is when you initiate a payment, and confirm is when you receive the payment and you're telling the seller app that, okay, I've received the payment. It's a confirmed order. You can now proceed to dispatch it. So this is a confirm. So these are the 4 order APIs: discovery plus orders, search, select, init, and confirm. Right. So this basically will ensure that you can search a product, you can add to cart, you can create a payment link, and then you can close and confirm the order. And correspondingly, seller app will respond on search. So if I say search as a buyer app, the seller app will say, okay, here is the search request. Search, results. These are the products. In the search results, the products basically they will tell. And if you have added a cart, the seller app will say, okay, the cart, I have the product, you can add to the cart. So on select, right? On init, which basically means that I'm taking a payment. This is where on init basically you might have to basically negotiate whether so usually buyer app will assert that I will collect the payment, and seller app will say, okay, you collect the payment. You'll agree to it, and on init is basically sort of a confirmation that you can collect the payment. And then once buyer app says, okay, I have confirmed the order, here is the transaction order number. Though, so but seller app will say, okay, I am confirming. On confirm is my confirmation that I have taken note of your order, and I will start dispatching the order. So let's take a simple example, right? Like someone searches Parle G. So buyer app, some like maybe Manoj Gupta goes on a particular buyer app, like for example on Airtel, and searches, I want to search Parle G in Jaipur, right? So that search request will go from Airtel to the gateway, right? The gateway will say, okay, for this Parle G, let me see who are the seller apps who are relevant in Jaipur. Right, in Jaipur, because when you register, you say, which localities you can deliver. So that as we saw in the subscribe request, you basically say, I'm from this city and I can deliver in this city. So gateway will say, okay, go to registry and say, for Parle-G, give me a list of relevant suppliers. And in this relevancy, Jaipur is, of course, a filter. So registry say, okay, these are the relevant suppliers who can give Parle-G, who potentially are Parle-G products, right? So then gateway will broadcast it to only those seller apps whom gateway feels will have Parle-G, right? In this example, I've shown 6 seller apps, but only is broadcasting only to 2. Search is only going to do 2 seller apps, right? So gateway in a way controls who will get the search request. It's not that everyone will get the search request, which I have originated from Airtel app, that I'm looking for a Parle-G in Jaipur, so that every seller app will get. No, it is not that. Only particular seller apps will get based on the category and those kind of stuff. And then basically that it may happen that only one seller app says, okay, I have a product. The other seller app is just not participating, doesn't have the product, so it doesn't give the result. So that is also possible. So basically, or one seller app says, okay, these are the products I have related to Parle-G. So it may be Parle-G and maybe plus other biscuits, not just Parle-G. That also is possible. And then buyer app gateway will then give those results to basically buyer app. Buyer app will collect all these results. It may happen that it actually gets results from not one seller app, but from 20 seller apps. So it has to manage all the, whatever it has gotten from other seller apps, combine the result and then give it to the customer. So this is how basically a simple discovery, basically search and on search works. As I said, only in search and on search, your gateway plays a role. For other APIs, you basically, the buyer app directly calls the seller app and seller app directly calls the buyer app. The gateway is not involved. I hope this flow was clear, because if you understand this flow, if you have any questions on the flow, let me know. But I hope the flow was clear. So how to get the API details and endpoints or details to start? So if you're looking for details around, API details, endpoints, you can probably ping me directly at manoj@plos.ai, and I'm happy to share the list. But there's if you search for ONDC GitHub, you can actually go to Google and search for ONDC GitHub. They have a Swagger link for all the API endpoints. Let me see, I may have a Swagger link. I'll just paste it here. I'll just paste it here so that, maybe it's easier just to go directly there. This is where you go and you basically will see all the APIs. So I'll just show it to you quickly here. So all the search APIs, select, init, confirm. So if you click any particular, search API, for example, here you can see your, the schema of that API, and what are the requests and responses. So it's basically pretty detailed from that point of view, right? For all the APIs, you can see, they have pretty detailed schemas, and example values and those kind of stuff, right? And then they also have schemas for the data structure they're using, and the variables and attributes they're using. So for example, if it's city, the schema for city is basically is a name and a code and those kind of stuff. So it's pretty detailed. You can look at it in more detail. Yeah. Now basically I'll quickly go into, I'm already 45 minutes into the webinar. So next 15 minutes, I'll quickly get into the API schema. So that if you're looking at Swagger and looking at API endpoints and looking at API request response, and so you have a fairly good idea of what these things are at a very high level. So API schema basically has an auth header, so authentication header. As we saw that we have to create a public key and a private key. Public key that we have to share with the registry. So basically, so that someone knows that you are sending the request and you are the person who is responding and not some other fake. So that authentication actually is in the header of the API. It's not in the main body of the API, but it is the header of the API. And that auth header is something that I will cover very quickly. And apart from that, you will have a context, a message, and an error objects in the API that you create. So there will be a context structure, then there's a message structure, and then there's the array structure that you can. So these are basically three things that will constitute any API that you will create on ONDC. And basically, when you're creating auth header, you first, so the three steps that you basically you have to do is create a key pair. Key pair means there's a private key and a public key that you have to create. So private key is something that you keep to yourself. You don't share it with anyone. It's private to you. You don't share it with anyone. Public key is what you give it to the registry. And when you are signing your header, which means that you are putting some passcode in that header and then signing it, that signing is done through your private key. It's a standard, PKI structure, public key, private key kind of signing, and it's a pretty standard. If you know about it. But if you want a more detailed document on it, I'm happy to share it. If you ping me at manoj@plots.ai, happy to share it so that you know how it is created. And then basically the third thing you have to do is your header has to be verified. As I said, if you're signing something and keeping some passcode in the header, someone has to, on the other side, when someone receives that API request and making sure actually you have sent it, then they can actually use a public key and do the auth header verification using your public key. So this is a very simple overview about auth header. This is a critical piece. Without this, you cannot talk to any entity, any participant in the ONDC. This is one of the biggest stumbling blocks that you will have when you're starting to connect to ONDC through APIs. At least for us, that was the biggest stumbling block. Now, Plotch, we are much beyond than just auth headers. We are transacting and those kind of stuff. But it was not that easy for us to do this piece. So this is going to be a challenge, but not something impossible or something very, very complicated. It's not like that. It's going to be challenging. I'll just take a few call. Sorry, I'll just So yeah, so I'll just continue. I'll just quickly checking some questions so that I can answer these. I'll probably take these questions a little bit later. Yeah, so basically, this is how your auth header look like. It's very technical in nature. It basically has a signature which has a key ID, which is a subscriber ID, which is the URL, which you have given to the registry. UKID, which I said, you get it from once you subscribe, you get this unique key ID, UKID. And that is basically is something that you have to put here. And the algorithm is ED525199. That basically, so that is there. Your created timestamp, your expires timestamp, and then you have to create an expired digest. That's what you do. And then you have to do this base 64, you do and signing string. So basically it is bit complicated. It's not as straightforward. It's not impossible in nature. It still takes you some time, some iterations before you get it right. Because the problem is that unless this goes, the other side actually doesn't see you at all, because your auth header will fail. So your APIs are not able to connect with the other party at all, right? So, and this is just example. Key ID is bap.plus.ai. 216 is my unique key ID. ED25Y19 is the algorithm. Expires, headers, and this is the signature that I got by using this base 64 signing string. Now signing string is what is also interesting, because what you're signing is your payload, your request payload. And so it's not so that people know that even the payload which was sent has not been tampered with, right? So that's why you also sign in your payload in the auth header to ensure the payload can also not be tampered, right? So this is something auth header looks like. It is part of your APIs. Any API request you do, your auth header has to be generated, inserted into the header of the API, and so that the other party can do auth header verification, whether it's a gateway or the seller app or the buyer app, they can do verify you, right? So a very critical piece that you have to make sure that you do it right and do it quickly. So as I said, every schema has one sec, yeah. So moving, have a context, message, and a structure, right? So we talked about auth header. I'm going to talk about context. So now we're in the body of the API. And each context has a description, domain, country, city, action, core version, BAP ID. BAP is basically your buyer app. It's BAP actually comes from backend, application partner. So BAP ID is your, buyer app ID. BAP URI is your BAP URL. BPP is your seller app, which is backend provider partner, basically. And BPP ID, and so basically BAP is your buyer app and BPP is your seller app, and it's ID and URI. Transaction ID, message ID, timestamp, key, and TTL. So this goes into the context in the as with all the APIs this will go, and basically an example is this. Example of context is that the domain is this, which, as I said, this is for logistics domain. Country is India. City, as I said, has to be STD code. So city is for Bangalore is 080. So STD is 080. Action, this is on search call. So context has on search. Version of the ONDC API that I'm using. BAP, basically seller app IDs, seller app URL. Sorry, buyer app ID, buyer app URL. Seller app ID, seller app URL. Transaction ID. Now, transaction ID and message ID is interesting. Right? Because transaction ID is related to transaction, as it says, it's related to transaction, which means related to the order. So this basically tells the other party for this, basically for this order ID, which is the transaction ID. I'm referring to this order ID. So using this, basically you can try, for which transaction ID this API is getting called, right? So transaction ID is very much related to the order. Message ID is basically related to identify if I am making a request because it's async, for which request I have received a response, because I might receive a lot of responses from a lot of parties. So I have to know for which response for request the response has come. So message ID is unique to a call request, and someone when they respond and on search or on init or on, the message ID has to be same as the request. So your request and response message ID has to be same, because otherwise the person will not know for which request this response has come, right? So message ID is very critical. So that's why it's there in the context of the API. So this basically tells, so this basically is the context which goes, so this is what you have to create with all the APIs. This is the auth header that you have to create. Now message is very, very specific to a particular API, right? Because the message is maybe different for a search API, the body of the message. It may be different for a select API, init API. So when I'm talking about message here, I'm talking about search here. So basically, if I'm asking for what request this for which message, let's say search for what I'm searching. So what is my intent? So it starts with intent, what my intent is, right? So my intent is this, that my fulfillment, again, this is going deeper into the API. Fulfillment is a sort of a structure in the schema, which basically talks about your start and end location. Where do you want it to be fulfilled? So in this case, when I'm searching, the fulfillment means from where do I want this to be delivered? Whatever am I requesting, where do I want to be delivered? So your GPS location of, let's say in the example of Parle-G in Jaipur, so GPS location will be for Jaipur here, right? Because that is where the customer is looking for the product, right? So the end location is that. The start location and location is because ONDC can work even for the taxis and rides. So there's a start and end location there, because taxi may start somewhere and end somewhere. So the intent will be from this start to this end, I want a taxi. So in that case, there'll be start and end. But since in this case, I'm just looking for Parle-G, I'm looking only an end location, which is my location where I am. And then I'm looking for an item descriptor. The printer will become Parle-G for me, right? So here basically in this example, the example I took, name will be Parle-G, right? So I'm looking for a fulfillment being done at this location, and I'm looking for an item whose name may have Parle-G, right? So this is how your search request has to be created. So I hope you're able to follow. I've tried not to go very deep. Also tried not to go at a very, very high level. Trying to balance that. But I hope guys can follow this, what I'm saying. And basically on search is basically where you're the request for this Parle-G. There's a request which is coming from on search. That request will have this structure. It will have categories, fulfillments, payments, offers, providers. And providers is where provider is like a seller, who is selling that product, right? So you are basically, as you can see, this kind of response comes, but I've taken like a piece of it. I've only highlighted item. So in item, for example, a particular item has been returned. So search basically what it's telling is that this is a customer care number is this for this item, parent item ID, because you can have variants here. So parent item ID is same as it may be, for this actually the parent item ID is 1387. Pickup, seller can return, seller can take a pickup return. It can take a return. So it's true. Time to ship is 2 hours. Return window is 24 hours. And basically it's talking about, a year of manufacturing, because this I think is a product which is perishable. It's a chicken product and those kind of stuff. And name is chicken. It has this, the image of the chicken is product is here. And whether it's cancelable, no. Whether it's available on COD, no. And then where can it be fulfilled from? Fulfillment ID, because I've only taken the first item part of this response. So there's a fulfillment structure where you have to basically give a fulfillment ID and fulfillment location and those kind of stuff. So this is a fulfillment ID. And then the price of the product. So what is my MRP and what is the price I'm selling right now, which is listed price, and what is my currency? As I said, it can be used for even outside of India. So there's a concept of currency also here. So this is how a search request will come, a search response will come if you have done a search for a particular product. And this is the type of information that will be available to you, right? And this is where I know I'll just conclude this part of the webinar, because I'm already like 1 hour. But the idea of this webinar was to take you through, a little bit of a high level what ONDC is, how ONDC will impact you, how the the API flows work. Then we are getting into the API structure. Then we even API structure. Now we're getting into certain APIs like search and on search, right? And then there are 9 other APIs that we can talk about, which maybe we will cover in another session. But hopefully, you were able to understand, maybe not fully, but at least, 80%, 90% you will be able to understand, how these APIs works and the architecture and those kind of stuff. Now, of course, you can do it yourself, but since I represent Plotch, I just thought, I'll let you know that these APIs are available through Plotch, which means that you can actually connect through Plotch, as we provide API as a service. So you can actually use our APIs to connect to ONDC, and we take care of all the auth header and other complexities. And we also creating layer 2 APIs and layer 3 APIs, so that you get a very rich collection of APIs. So for example, if you want to search by pin code, if you want to search by a particular category, if you want to search by a particular brand, those are not the APIs which are exist in the layer 1 API. But as layer 2 APIs we provide, which are much richer APIs, much simpler APIs and those kind of stuff. So you're happy to you ping me manoj@plots.ai if you're looking for layer 1 APIs. I'll quickly take few questions. It's already there. Yeah, one sec. Is there any escalation process or ONDC phone number? We send multiple images. Okay, sorry, if you're not able to get a response from team at ondc.org. See, I'll tell you these. They are very, very busy. I know that they have a lot on their plate. They have few deadlines to make. So it. So I'm it is possible that they have their hands tied, that you're not able to get a response from them. So unfortunately, there's nothing I can do where I can help you in this regard. You will have to unfortunately try again and see if they can respond to you. What is a criteria gateway shortlist seller app? As I said, gateway looks at the registry and the data in the registry. Basically, for example, at a very high level, If it's a Parle-G product, then it knows the domain is retail. And since the GPS location says that it has come from Jaipur, so I will only look for seller apps who are based, who can deliver in Jaipur, right? That those are the two at a very high level how a gateway would shortlist a seller app. Now, there are other ways gateway may do later on, which may be based more on, more deeper category specification and those kind of stuff. But as of today, these are the two filters that I know that gateway uses to shortlist the seller app. Yeah, so this is what this session was all about. We will definitely do more deep dives into more APIs, 10 other APIs. There are a lot of other infrastructure APIs. There are a lot of other interesting things which are coming in ONDC, whether it's dispute resolution or, even like payment and settlement and those kind of stuff. So we'll keep talking about it. Thank you for your time, and I hope this was useful to you guys. Thank you again. Bye-bye.